Okay, good morning. Actually, I need to set up my audio really quickly. Which I didn't think about before we got started, so hopefully this will work. Alright, let me try to switch up my microphone momentarily here. Alright, hopefully that microphone is working. Probably going to do a shorter stream this morning, but since I hadn't streamed since last Saturday, I think, Saturday or Sunday, then I thought we should make some progress on the library project. So, let me know if anyone is watching, if the audio is working. I think it should be at this point. And I haven't looked at this since last weekend, so I think we just need to spin up the Docker container containing our database. Hope everyone is doing well. And we'll go into our library management project. As I recall, last time we didn't make any changes to the schema, but we had started on, let me see if I can bring up my, hello Tariq, good evening to you as well. I hope you're doing well. Alright, so last time we looked at this, the volume too low. I'll see if I can turn the volume up a little bit. Is that any better? That should be a little bit better. Thanks for the heads up on that, Jay. I did not come prepared this morning. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. That's probably too loud. Plus, I think there's a delay between when I see the messages and... Alright. Alright, well, send me another message if it... mic check is off. Alright, hold on. Hey, Nathan. Thank you for watching. Can you guys hear me okay now? According to my settings, it looks like you can hear, but if you can't, I'll stop and restart the stream. Okay, sweet. Alright. So, last time we looked at this, I had started rewriting services to be async, as well as to, I believe, return these service result types, which themselves contain whatever type that the service is considered concerned with. So if I recall, we had made it pretty much all the way through an article service in terms of implementation. And then if we take a look at our controllers in our article controller, we should now be able to use the new implementations of the article service that we have here. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the heads up on the audio. Alright, so we need a plan of attack this morning. I'm not going to do a super long stream this morning because I have some stuff I got to get done today, but we should be able to make more progress here, and things are kind of rolling now in terms of a pattern. The one big thing I will say that could be a possibility is we could implement the repository pattern here, and that would make unit testing a lot easier. So last weekend when we looked at this, I got kind of caught up trying to figure out how to actually test an EF Core DB context related classes and how to properly mock those and everything. And all of that would be made much easier if I simply had a generic repository in the data access layer that wrapped any EF calls, and then we could mock out the repository and make cleaner assertions about the behavior of our service layer. And then we could use that in-memory DB context stuff for testing the repository layer, and then just basic mocks for testing the behavior of the services, if that makes sense. Someone last weekend mentioned using the in-memory DB context, and I think that that's a fantastic idea. But I would like to couple the generic repository with that. That said, today, maybe what I should do as well is add that to the to-do list here, because I think we had a to-do list, checklist. Right, so we're working on both of these things, which I just mentioned. I think that we can add the generic repository to this. But to recap on things we have done, if anyone hasn't followed it up to this point, we're on .NET Core 3 now, which is fantastic. We have a Postgres database instead of Microsoft SQL Server. Postgres is running in a Docker container, and we are partway through converting our synchronous methods to async and just starting in the service layer and working our way forward. We also have a new class library called stacked. I'm in the completely wrong project here, you guys. This is a productive dev project. So let's open up the appropriate library project here. I was like, why does this not match what I'm talking about? That other project I'll make a better video about. It's not on a live stream at some point this summer. Okay, so we have this library models class library now, which contains DTOs, and we'll take a quick look at what we've done there. And DTOs just being data transfer objects, so they're plain old C# objects that don't have any behavior themselves other than that they store data that we can pass around throughout the app. Thanks, Baylor, for the heads up on that. All right, so let's see. So where do we want to go from here? So we created this pagination result, and we're actually invoking that, I believe, in the, let's see if we invoke that in the data layer or in the service layer. So we'll take a look at the service layer first. And we started working in book service, I believe. And yeah, so we're newing up pagination results here that we can push into this page service result to return to the front end. So things are looking okay there. Let's see what we haven't implemented so far. So we have our iBook service interface. This interface looks up to date with tasks, so everything is async at this point. And the implementation looks, at first glance, pretty complete. The other thing we could do here throughout these classes to clean things up before we're done is just to add some documentation to each of them. The names kind of suggest what they do, so I'm not going to worry too much about that at this point. So now let's take a look at our checkout service. Looks like we have some dependency injection going on here, and the interface is up to date with tasks. Let's go ahead and get all of our interfaces up to date. Maybe that'll be a good starting point for today. So I hold service. We're going to update this one, and in terms of what the service layer is returning, we're always going to return these page service results if it's a collection, or a service result if it is an instance of a single instance. So here, and we can just explicitly return a list. I don't think there's a problem with that, but I do that inside of the page service result, I believe. And everything is going to be async at this point. So we'll need to bring in the appropriate the appropriate namespace here. And what's it upset about here? Incorrect number of reference parameters, page service result. I'm messing up my error. Let's just do it this way. First of all, we'll do a service result. And then this one will also be, previously I had these void methods in the void methods for doing basic like creation and update probably, and I think the pattern that we're switching to here is to return, in the case of adding records to our database, we'll return the primary key. Hey Anton, it's good to see you guys this morning. I hope everyone is doing well. Here we'll return a task service result of int. And I guess the other one was the get all, so let's just do this, and this is an asset type. We'll have to look at how I originally used the hold service in terms of getting all, whether we also want to be able to get all holds for a particular patron, which seems like a reasonable thing that we might want to do. So now let's look at our checkout service. I'm just going to close what I'm not using here. Okay, checkout service is implemented. iLibrary asset service is not. So we're going to go ahead and import missing references. And our get all here will be library assets. For the get here, we are getting the library asset, obviously. And for the add, we are going to do the same. Hey, Albert. How's it going? Great to have you here, too. I made .NET coding fun again. I'm happy to hear that. It's fun for me, so I hope that it can be fun for other people as well. Okay, and then we had, so here's what we can do. We can say all these are task, service result of strings, and then the library branch, library card, these are both task, service result of these things. These shouldn't be too bad to actually either. Actually, nothing should be too bad. These are all pretty, I'd say probably pretty granular methods. And what's also suggesting itself here is that, again, since these services don't have much behavior beyond CRUD operations and data access, they kind of suggest that they would, the pattern is kind of suggesting that they might benefit in some sense from being derived from a base class, like a base data, maybe like data access service class or something like this, because they all of some type, because they all have this basic CRUD operation, the get all, where we return this paginated result, get, add, and that sort of thing. And so I'm not going to jump to that conclusion just yet. I mean, kind of have jumped to that conclusion, but I'm not going to jump to the implementation just yet. All right. Okay, so now we have some more, and I like to actually sort of divide, I like to sort of partition these interface members by type. So like collections here, basic types here, and also not basic types, but custom types here, and then base types here. All right, so let us take these IEnumerables, and it's just going to be easier if I do this, I think. So bring in this. This is for a library branch. As you can see, the only thing that's sort of changing here between services is the generic type. So at least for these, like these get all methods for sure. So then for patron, now here's where we have a case of one service that's doing a handful of sort of different things that's not sort of strictly tied to the data access of the type library branch itself, but in this case we're also able to get patrons who belong to a library branch, so it's still related. Hey Vilayutham, thanks for joining. And then we'll do a paged service result here of library asset for getting assets. Get branch hours. Here I'm really thinking like we don't need to paginate through branch hours, right? Like there's only going to be like hours per week. I don't know about calm, Valyutham, but thank you for saying that. I don't always feel calm. But that's nice of you to say. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that you not only enjoy the content, but enjoy coding as well. So here we're going to just return, I think, just a service result. And here we can return a list of strings for the branch hours. We don't need to paginate through branch hours. At least that's my current approach. My current thinking. And then here we just have a task service result, library branch, get by ID. And then as far as the add goes, that's going to look just the same as this. Sorry for jumping around so much. That's good, that's good. Yeah, so the add will look like this. And here we can just have task service results of the original type that we had as well. Oops, I missed a angle brace. Okay. All right, so this one's looking up to date almost through our service definitions. Here we want to be able to get a paginated list of library cards. We want to be able to get a service result, library card, and this one is just called get, and then we want to be able to do the service result int where we just add the library card, and of course this one parameter needs to be the library card ID. And this add here needs to be a library card DTO. We need to make sure that I'm using the DTOs throughout here as well in the service layer as opposed to the data access models. And if we think about why that is, we have to think about where these services are going to get invoked. And so this is a basic MVC app. And so when we talk about the service layer here, we're just talking about the classes that are going to be invoked from our web layer. And so if we take a look back down in our web layer, in our controllers, these are going to be broken now because of the changes that we're working on. But here's where these services are coming into play. And if we think about what our controllers are doing, they're just receiving HTTP requests from our client, from our users. And our users don't know and don't care about how we store data, and so we want that separation of concerns between how we set up the data in our data access layer and what knowledge, if you will, the client side has about that. And so basically, this is all a long way of saying that we don't want data access dependencies all the way up in our web layer. Our service layer acts as a sort of buffer between those two layers, and it talks about our domain models, if you will, in the language of our DTOs. And it does all of the mapping here in the service layer between how the client wants to do something and what shape that data needs to be in to work with our database. And so that's all a long way of saying that the methods that we create in our service layer need to speak this DTO language, and they don't. We'll worry about how they get mapped in the implementation. It's just going to be an implementation detail of these classes, and it's going to make things a lot easier in the long term to change because we won't have a coupling between data access and web. So let's come back into the things we've built this morning so far and get rid of the references to data access models. And I'm sure I'll miss something here. We also may not have DTOs for everything yet. This would be a good chance to create those. Okay, so now you can see that library.data.models can nicely go away. And then we can come into patron, and what we're going to do is take this class. I'm just going to copy what we have as a patron definition in data access, and then in models we're going to come in here and we're going to create a class patron DTO. Okay, and then we're going to paste this, and we're not going to worry about any of the data attribute stuff on the model itself. Not because that's a bad thing, that's totally fine, but there are other ways that we can do model validation that don't involve basically assigning that behavior to the DTO itself. I just want to think of the DTO as a container, like a dumb container that knows nothing about anything. It's just it's an interface to the shape of data. And we can, I realize I'm jumping around a bit here, but just to play out my design decisions out loud, we could delegate the responsibility of the conformity of the data, if you will. So like, let's say string first name has to have a min or a max length in order for us to consider it valid data, which is a good idea to create that sort of buffer before we get all the way down to the database layer and have the database tell us that something doesn't work. But we can delegate that responsibility to separate classes, and there's a good library out there called Fluent Validation, which is a wrapper around some method, which is a collection of methods and classes containing that behavior that we can set up. So I just want to keep our DTOs as simple as possible and talk about how we validate the data that goes into these models separately. Okay. All right. Yep, so now our various services are no longer going to be implementing the interfaces that we're creating because they're implementing the old ones. Let's go ahead and look at our other interfaces. Okay, we have this Paginator. Yeah, and a lot of this was kind of the implementation we had for a Paginator. That's something I'm not going to totally get into right now. But the Paginator that we created, or I created, was is not the final design of this. So, although, yeah, okay, so I pulled some stuff out of it. So previously, I don't remember if I did this on stream or not. I think I did, because I don't think I have worked on this outside of the stream. Previously, our paginator actually was responsible for executing the SQL queries via EF core. So I would do like order by, skip, take, and then toList async, which is actually going to end up executing that query on the database. Whereas the current design, which I thought was not what was not ideal. And so rather we just build a queryable and we return that to the caller of build page result. And then build page result can be, or the caller of build page result can be in charge of executing that SQL query using the queryable, iQueryable that it gets back. So we won't go into the weeds yet before we finish updating our interface definitions. Okay, let's close this one. There is our get all. Service result of a patron DTO. Oops, did not mean to do that. Taking our patron ID here, and then I think we were just doing service result of int for add, and here we have our, looks like I had a typo in the old where I had patron new book as parameter name, so that was a copy and paste bit of laziness. Get all this set up. So we want a page service result as well for checkout history. And this is for a particular patron ID. So here we'll have a int patron ID in page and per page. And then we need one for holds. And one for checkout. Keep forgetting that these need to be DTOs. And this is get checkouts. Presumably for a patron ID here. So now these are good. We need to create our checkout history DTO. So we'll come up into our models. And here we'll make a checkout history DTO. And it probably has an int ID, but let's find our original checkout history. Okay. And again, we're not going to worry about annotating our data in the DTO itself. And a quick sort of trick we can use to make sure that we're using DTOs everywhere is just to remove the reference to the data access layer temporarily from the service layer. And I'm just thinking out loud. That would just throw errors everywhere that we need to fix that in our interfaces, but we'd have to add it back anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that just yet. Okay, service status. I assume this is status ID. To be honest with you, I don't really remember what this service does. But we'll come back and fix the parameter name if it needs to change. And then in terms of add here, this would be the... Was status like a enum or something? Why did I have int here, or did I not? Okay, so we'll just make it status DTO. And then int add status DTO status. It might seem like kind of a lot of work to have these intermediate DTOs that essentially map at the moment one-to-one with the data access layer models, the entity models. But a couple things, it already has the benefits that I mentioned, but also we'll be using AutoMapper, which takes away some of the pain of having to do that serialization manually. So it's really not all that much work to achieve some decoupling, thanks in part to AutoMapper. Okay, so now let's finish up our last service here where we have this page service result of video DTO. This is going to be what am I missing? Get by director. So we need to create a video DTO, and I think that might finish our DTOs. If I can spell it correctly. And this is about as simple as it gets. So now we bring this in, and we should be building except for the implementation of the service layer. So being as this is a major refactor and we're in a branch, I'm not going to worry about making commits to this branch that don't build. Should have seen what we did first. All right, so yeah, we just basically got those interfaces up to date and added DTOs. I have a feeling that my interfaces are not completely decoupled from data access, so let's check that really quickly. Book service, dealing with book DTOs, that's a good sign. Only dealing with DTOs in checkout service. Hold service needs a DTO here. Oh wait, is asset type an enum? What did I do here? This is a class asset type. Where is this used? This could probably just be a struct. This is only used by hold service and library asset service. Library data models. Is this really a data model? Is that true? Let's connect to, I almost want to connect to SQL. Oh, I could just look at the library DB context. Yeah, it doesn't look like I created an asset type table. Is that the discriminator column? Is that what discriminates between books and videos from library asset? I believe it is. Okay, well, a little bit of duplication is less evil than the wrong abstraction, according to Sandy Metz, who's my developer hero. So what we're going to do is create, for the time being, this thing that seems completely redundant, which is an asset type DTO, and forgive me for doing this. If we can pull this class completely out of data access layer and just have it live in the DTO class library, then we will be able to do that at a later point without any pain to speak of whatsoever. So I feel fairly confident that this is in fact a DTO that's already living in the data access layer. How many times have I said DTO this morning? Probably too many. All right, come here. Okay, we'll come back to our interfaces. We'll make use of our asset type DTO. And what we want to see when we change this is a using go away. So these are looking good. This one's looking good. And this one's looking good. All right. All right, now comes the hard work. That was the easy part. The hard part will be, it's not really hard, but the tedious part now, I should say, will be refactoring our service layer to implement the new interfaces that we created. So one thing that we can do here to be sort of slick, although it's not going to help us much, is just replace all voids with task. So now I'm wondering if I should just try to do something slick with find and replace in each of these, or just start from scratch and implement them. You know what? I'm just going to try the find and replace first, to get us along, to get us partially there. Each of these methods is really short, so either way shouldn't hurt too bad. So all of the publics should now be, I think the way to do this in Vim is something like this, but I'm just going to do explicitly public task, public. Been doing JavaScript too much. Yeah, we need to say public async task. All right, that's good. Public will be public async task. So that at least starts to change. We'll bring in task. And then, yeah, not for our constructor though. And not for our class. All right, so public async task. Hey Albano, how's it going? Where are you guys all joining from this morning? Task int. I'm going to come back and we're going to change all task to task of service result. Let's see. Okay. This is a place where it'd be nice to have the repository layer set up, and I'll have to do that at some point here. What's it mad about here? So now we can, I have to remember now if save change, does save changes async return anything for us? It does. This might just return the PK of the new instance. Returns a task that represents the task result contains the number of state entries written to the database. Well, that's not very helpful. But I think that EF is just tracking this, and this needs to be a DTO. I think that EF is tracking the new asset, and maybe we get the ID on it. So return new service result. This will be something we'll have to test. So we need to make sure that that works, but there's no problem there. Clearly we need to map our library asset DTO to an instance or an instance of a data model. So here we'll have our private read-only IMapper. We'll bring in this. And then here we'll say that the var asset model is equal to mapper.map library asset from our new asset DTO. So AutoMapper is just going to give us that actual data model that we can pass here. And then I think EF is tracking that instance and will augment the asset model with the ID once we get that back, I believe. It's been a long time since I did that. Has it been a long time? I feel like I should know that, but okay. So here we have first or default async, and we don't want to return this, but we'll save our first result is equal to this. And rather than first result, we'll say first asset is equal to this. And now we need to map the other direction. Return mapper.map. I'm going to explicitly do this. To I actually don't know how AutoMapper handles derived classes. I'm sure it handles it amazingly, I mean obviously, but I just don't know exactly how it does it yet. All right. Public async task paged service result library asset here. All right, so here's where we need to use that Paginator. So we should be getting an iQueryable back from this, right? IIncludable queryable back from this. And then what we can do is use our Paginator, which I don't exactly remember how we did that, but we're going to inject it anyway. Paginator, and we need a paginator that paginates through library asset DTOs. All right. It's 11 o'clock. I think, what time did I start? Around 10:15 or so. This is probably going to be a fairly short stream. Probably going to work through the implementation of the library asset service, and we will maybe call it after that. Although I'd like to see what this looks like in the controllers. There's only 4 controllers in this entire application, so there's actually not a whole lot of work to do in the web layer, other than make these async HTTP requests. The home controller doesn't even do anything, and the patron controller doesn't do much either. It's interesting that there's so much behavior defined in the service layer. I have a feeling I didn't even use all of it in the web layer. So I may have went overboard in the service layer, sort of, with all of the possible combinations of CRUD that can be done. But it's good practice, I would say, if you're maybe building an MVC app in .NET Core for the first time, to go through various combinations of using these link query extension methods like include and first or default, singular default, because they are really powerful and really fun to sort of combine to create different types of business logic. So all of that to say, I may have provided too much or additional functionality that's not even used in the controller layer, but it's maybe good for practice anyway. All right, so here we want to save our page is paginator dot build page result for paged assets. What is this? Right, so we need to also pass it page per page and then the order by expression. So here we need page, so we need parameters for that. Page per page. And then we need the, I was going to abbreviate asset, but I have a feeling that the name of the delegate will not be appropriate. So we're just going to call it A dot, we're going to order it by, let's order it by title. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. We need to rename page here to page results. And what are we expecting here? Oh. Need to obviously now use our var paged asset. Here we're just going to call this our assets. And now we need our asset DTOs is equal to mapper.map. Can it map? It probably can't map from an iQueryable, no? It probably needs an instance, doesn't it? This is a good question. Just doing this so I can see the type that comes out here. Yeah, I need this to be, oh, can you map to an iQueryable? I don't think that this is possible. It's not yelling at me, but I think at runtime that might blow up. But who knows? iQueryable, oh, we're getting back to this is an iQueryable build page result, asset DTOs. Thinks that that's a DB set. All right, I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And our paginator needs more work here. We're going to return a new page service result with the data being our page result. And error being null. We'll also need to do exception handling, which I'm not doing yet in this class. Here, we need this to be a pagination result. What is this here? Pagination result. Results per page and page number. And is my paginator not returning that? So where am I using pagination results? Oh, I already did this. So basically, I await paginator build page result with. Oh, I see. Okay, let's do it that way. I also don't know if that's totally efficient, but I already solved this problem once before, apparently last weekend. So I get my library assets, and then I get my results, where I get a page of assets, and I await paginator build page result with my assets. And then, so this method needs to be async, that's good. And then the paginated books here map to a list of library asset DTOs given my page of assets, the only thing, and then the results here, pagination results is equal to a new pagination result of our library asset DTO. Sorry about all the mess on the screen. This will all be cleaned up momentarily. Where the results are those, I'm going to call this paginated assets. Per page is just sort of returning whatever the user passed in anyway. Another nice thing that I don't have on these paginated results is that you'll see in a lot of like APIs is a property on the result that gets on the response. That's like a link to the next page, so you don't have to do the manual query string construction in your code. You can just say like page.nextPage or something like that. But neither here nor there. And why isn't this awaitable when it's awaitable elsewhere? I'm clearly missing something obvious here. Oh, yeah, I am. So previously I had this toList async inside of the paginator, but my gut tells me we don't want the paginator to be making database queries. Maybe we do. I mean, there's probably a perfectly valid reason to do it there too, especially since we're just bubbling it up one layer of abstraction. But all right, so what does it matter about now? Includable iQueryable, it's not assignable to type, db set. I have a feeling if I did this, it wouldn't be upset, right? No, still upset. Assets is library assets. Microsoft EF Core, library asset, DTO. Oh, my paginator should be paginating through data models. Yes. Hey, Sonny, thanks for joining again. It's good to see you. And now it's probably not mad if I did that. So we need to do this include somehow. Yes, the context everything will be async for sure. For sure. Let's see if our paginator can also do, do we just need another overload for an IAwaitable iQueryable? Yes, I will, sorry if I'm glossing over the error here. Is this a thing? Yes, that's a good point, Ahmed. I will show you the error that I'm trying to solve here. So the problem is that this parameter assets here, and I realize the text is a little bit small. I'm not sure how to make the text on the error bigger, but it's telling us that this efcore.query.iIncludable queryable of type library asset is not assignable to the parameter type dbset library.data.models.library asset. And the reason it's happy if I remove the include is because the include is what makes this this iIncludable type rather than just the normal iQueryable type, which we can get from the db set. Hey Rishabh Patel, it's good to see you again as well. So I hope that clears up the error. The thing that I need to change then is page result needs to also be able to work with iIncludable queryables or whatever that type is. So let's see what the iIncludable queryable of the type. So my first attempt at trying to solve this is going to give us an additional overload here of I includable queryable of type T. Is this just going to tell us that it's the same thing? Same signature is already declared. And now if this is going to be upset that the incorrect number of type parameters reference to interface. Sunny's saying make asset async. Oh, I see. You want to await this. And then is there an include async here? So we can't include async here. And I don't want to say to list async here because I don't want to pull back the whole. I don't want to pull back all the assets in the entire database. EF core needs a pagination, needs some pagination built in. That would be super helpful. I have a feeling I can fix this, but let's see what Microsoft suggests doing for using, maybe there should be just some way to use a cursor. Paging. So yeah, I'm not worried about the pagination logic. I'm more interested in okay, so paginated list T create async, queryable T source. Ahmed saying context library assets as queryable. Yeah, I gave that a shot as well, but I don't think that that actually worked. We'll see though. Like so, library assets dot as queryable. Because it's already queryable. The problem is that there's not an maybe if we put this here, for instance. This is still, oh wait, so this is a different error now. I have a feeling I just overcomplicated things by building a separate paginator object at this point. Let's get rid of this. Yeah, but if I call toList on these assets here, then I haven't done anything to prevent, like if I just called toList here, toList async, problem is that now I have the whole database table, I think, getting enumerated. So what if we just simplified things and start with this idea of just making this task paginated list all right, let's actually start with something like this and make our paginator a little bit cleaner. Sorry, wrong class. Wow, my IDE is not playing nicely. Why don't you find Paginator? Oh, because I'm in the wrong. I'm once again in the wrong project. Alright, so the idea that they were using was just return a task of a paginated list, T, create async, pass it the queryable source, page index. Oh, in the parameter, Ahmed, let's see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, again, this would just enumerate the whole table, I think. And I don't want to do that. So we'll come back here. Oops, close the window, of course. Oh, Contoso University. I never graduated from Contoso University. Alright, so I see. So uses this static method on it. Yes, I am going to need a coffee. I have not been getting very good sleep this weekend or these last couple of days either. And maybe I need to get some better sleep. Change your signature to be public task. I queryable T, suggests Sunny. Like this, you mean, to make this async? There's nothing asynchronous happening in build page result though. Okay, so what I am going to do instead is, first of all, find out where my paginator lives. This is what I want to know. Where does the paginator live? I thought I put that in the models. Helpers. We are going to use the Contoso version paginated list, simplify things. And then I'm going to change this to suit our particular needs. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the auto import doesn't work. Okay. This can be an expression. This can be an expression. Okay. This has some additional helper methods on it, which are kind of nice. Okay, so now we have a create async static method on a paged list. And yeah, but see, this is still assuming that the items that we get back here, okay, well, they're iQueryable to begin with. The whole thing we're trying to avoid is not querying the whole database before we start paging. We want to get a queryable list of that paged of like n number of items. So let's try invoking this from where we get our items in data access, from data access. So here we have this iQueryable. And what's the signature? Items, count, page index, page size. And we'll change this to be ours. So assets, page per page, count, which is just page index, page size, so page per page. Same thing here with this iIncludable queryable. Wonder if I just need to look up paginating iIncludable queryable. I think if I play with this long enough, I will just figure it out. So I want to go back here. We get this iIncludable queryable. If I look at the way that I did it in book service here, in book service we call page of books. This wouldn't work if we did include book dot whatever author, because and in fact looking at it here, I'm using this build page results ordering by author, which probably isn't going to work because of the fact that if this were an object, so if we had some virtual object author on it that doesn't like take library branch for instance, so I wanted to order by library address location.id. This isn't going to work because this is an iIncludable queryable. And it will work as a regular iQueryable. So the question is, how do we make our paginator work with iIncludable queryable? And so my first thought was, well, make an overload with iIncludable queryable of type T, builds includable page result. This is now telling us that iIncludable queryable takes 2, which is our T property, which is the includable here. So maybe we can do something like this. Come back here to build includable queryable, and here we want to include the status. And now if I come back to build includable like queryable, I could have, I feel like I'm building my own framework code here, which is what it is. Just to see if this works. And then like if I need to include two things, I can do like this. Come back here, status, location, which is a string. T order, T1, T2. Must be a reference type. Oh, I think I messed this up pretty bad. Kind of running out of steam this morning after not getting much sleep. Oh, I need to be able to include two things. All right, we're gonna reset on that one. And here I'm going to add a to-do where we design and implement a query safe paginator. Must use, must work with includable queryable. Must contain a generic sort property. Must support Alright, so that's just going to be something that I have to think about for a little while. Probably not best done on stream, but I apologize for going down that rabbit hole for the time being. We're going to come back to that. I'll probably do that off stream and just design it properly, and then the next time I stream we can review the decisions that I made there, but having trouble getting it to work this morning. So I think I'm going to wrap up this stream this morning. Things that we did succeed at this morning are, at least now we have interfaces which are using the task API for everything, which is nice. And we have started to implement other services. So we have our book service implemented to the new interface, our checkout service, and now we have the remaining services to do, which are actually quite a bit smaller. The main roadblock at this point is me designing a query safe paginator that doesn't return the whole database. Don't return the whole table before paginating. And we have to support making includable queries. So we have to be able to say things like, give me the things that are linked, in, for instance, so a patron with their checkouts, for instance, we need to be able to call .include at the EF core layer and still paginate. And then we also have to have support for generic sort property. That one's not so bad. We already have that in the paginator. If we take a look, we just have that bypassing an expression of type function, of the type, and then of that order property. So I need to come up with a way to, and I have a feeling, again, I don't want to go down the whole rabbit hole right now. I have a feeling it's going to look something like the expression for the order by, and then we'll also have the expression for the T includable. And I'll just have to T order, T include. So I'm just pseudocoding at this point, but we're going to need to be able to support some chaining of includables. And a lot of times in the frameworks, when you see this, they have like a million overloads of the same thing. Not a million, but they have a handful where we'd be like T1, T2, T3, etc. And this is just breaking the interface. So I should have explained that using the interface definition. Sorry guys, I'm so sleepy this morning. So we're going to end up doing something like this: T order, T include 1, T include 2, where we have these probably we'll just start out with like this. And this has got to return an I includable queryable. And then this has got to be the T include 1, T include 2. Except that I have a feeling that it only accepts 1 here. Need to look at the interface for this. Oh, maybe by default it just supports supports chaining multiple together. So this will be something I have to design, but my thoughts are basically that I'm going to have to create a method in our paginator that builds a page result for includable queryables that still supports our order by expression as well. So thanks for watching. I'm sorry that this stream was not as fun as last weekend. I'm just pretty tired this morning, but hopefully next time I stream we'll have a better one. And hopefully this week I'm also going to get back to making some more traditional YouTube videos. So I have some ideas about making a couple of videos on serverless architecture with API Gateway and Lambdas and AWS that might be kind of fun. Also have the Blazor app to get back to at some point.